Hello and welcome to another one of our weekly updates this week, ending on Friday, April the 25th.
25th.
And
yep.
It's been an off week at the General Assembly this week. Both the House and the Senate passed a resolution saying that they were going to take this week off to go back into the district, do some work there. For those of you that don't know, they are a part-time legislature, which means they don't even They don't even get paid part-time wages. I think it's about $13,000 a year, and then they get a per diem.
Plus per diem
When they're in the state house. But they're not at the state house this week. It's been a quiet week there. Not been a quiet week here in our office. We have been ramping up for the upcoming few weeks before crossover, which is on May the 8th. But it's going to be.
What is crossover?
Crossover, that's a good question. When in the legislative process, as a bill becomes law, it has to cross over from one chamber to the other. So if it originates in the House with Jerry, it has to cross over to John in the Senate, vice versa. If it starts in the Senate, it goes then to the House. And so that bill has to cross over
From the Chamber of Origin.
From the Chamber of Origin by May the 8th in order to be considered in that other chamber moving forward if it's going to become law.
Supposedly.
Yes.
And this is for non-revenue bills.
Correct.
Right.
Those can continue on that would affect the budget and whatnot beyond that. So next week, so you're going to hear a lot in the next couple of weeks. Next week is going to be an extremely busy week in the building, the legislative office building, and the week after, and possibly, depending on what crossover looks like, the week after that.
Yep.
So a couple bills that we want to let you know about, HB 519 and HB 560. Guys, let's talk about HB 519, the Parental Medical Bill of Rights. John, what do we need to know about that bill?
Yeah, thanks, Mitch. Well, you all may remember that last year the General Assembly passed a Parents' Bill of Rights that acknowledged and recognized the fundamental rights that parents have to raise their children as they see fit. And that dealt specifically in the areas of education and health care. However, there's been a law on the books since the early 70s, since the early 1970s, that basically said that minors can consent to receive medical care for certain circumstances, including pregnancy, not including abortion, sexually transmitted diseases, abuse of controlled substances or alcohol, and also emotional disturbance.
And that's a pretty wide window there.
It is. So minors could consent to be treated for these services without their parents' consent. And so as this Parents' Bill of Rights was enacted, obviously questions arose about what about these longstanding provisions that allow for minors to consent to these services. And so this bill actually seeks to address that and restore effectively parents' rights to consent and to be made aware of their children's receiving medical care for these kinds of services, except for pregnancy. In House Bill 519, there are specific reasons why the bill sponsors chose to maintain the rights of a minor to consent to treatment for pregnancy, again, not including abortion, but essentially requiring the parent's consent for a minor to receive care for, again, sexually transmitted diseases, substance abuse or alcohol abuse, and emotional disturbance.
Now, the exception they do have in this is in cases of abuse or neglect, that's suspected.
Yep.
And this is where, we've tried to understand why was that bill ever enacted? And that's probably the understanding. And so that's why with this bill, there's a provision in there to make exceptions for when.
So if the physician believes that seeking parents' consent for these healthcare services would likely place the minor in danger of abuse or neglect, then they can that kind of is not covered in the statute, or there's a carve out for that.
And medical professionals are considered mandatory reporters. They
Yes.
have to do that. That is the exception, however, because I know a lot of times we go to that and we say, well, what about in cases of abuse and neglect? I think the rule is that parents know what's best for their children.
Yes.
And so we have to count on parents to be able to know and make informed decisions based on what they know. So I think that's extremely important. This bill is a very good bill and needs to happen.
Yeah.
An additional provision to addressing that 1970 legislation, as you said, John, it relates to medical records.
Right.
Yes.
Because I think we all are just puzzled, baffled. I don't know, when you're trying to find out information about medical records, and this is for your child who you're raising, paying the medical bills, and they're going, you hear about people not having access. Again, it would provide that access and carve out those exceptions.
Yeah. One of the other hot topics that we're hearing a lot about right now is on transgenderism and focusing on pronouns and identity and how people are raised. John is, speaking of raising, John is making sure that he can still
Speaking of
stand.
medical conditions, sorry fans, I blew my knee out last weekend, and I'm having trouble standing on one foot for an extended period of time.
He's doing a good job, and there's a lot to unpack with this. We'll keep it really concise on HB 560, the Parents Protection Act. If parents want to raise their children based on their innate biological sex as male or female, boy or girl, which will grow to a man or a woman because God created two sexes, male and female, then they have the right, ability, and protection to do so.
Yes.
And that's what this bill would do. It's not just for parents. There's some, not just for parents. There are also some carve-outs for custodians, guardians, that sort of thing.
Right. And also individuals who are seeking to be foster parents
Yes.
or adoptive
Yes.
parents, that they cannot be denied that opportunity because they would raise the child according to that child's biological sex.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I know we've heard this has been happening in various states across the country. As recently as within the last few days, Colorado's House, it hadn't passed their whole legislative
Yes.
body, passed a bill that said children could be removed from their birth parents' home for
Right.
this reason, but if they're not affirming the child, how the child is identifying differently from the way they were born.
So this
And
bill-
so it's very real. Not to get too much into the whole history of it, but I know I was shocked the first time California passed legislation that said if you're living in a state that doesn't allow procedures, whether they're chemical or surgical, bring them to California. We'll
Yes.
provide those. If you're a child whose parents don't agree, we will take
Right.
custody of your child and provide these. So this is a very, real problem that it needs to be addressed. And it's a
Absolutely.
good time. North Carolina passed related legislation last session about not allowing
Yes.
either the chemical or surgical procedures. Now they're reinforcing this reality that, anyway, I think it's got to be a spiritual blindness that people
Right.
don't understand the harm that's done, why you would allow parents to affirm, encourage, whatever's causing that struggle, that they not be, well, in this case, have their children actually taken away because
Sure.
they don't affirm, that they know the loving responses to help their child realize what their real identity is.
Yeah, I mean, the bottom line, and this kind of marries those two, the biblical, the proper treatment of biblical sexuality and gender with the parents' rights. And the parents should never fear reprisal from the government or anybody else,
That's
for
right.
that matter, for raising their children according to their innate biological sex. I mean, that's really the bottom line with this. And so this bill is intended to protect that and to ensure that not only biological parents, but again, parents who are seeking to care for children through the foster care system and through adoption have the same protections, and that the same standard applies in those circumstances as well.
So for really simple people like me, this says keep your California and your Colorado out of our Carolina. So I like that. That's good. We're going to continue to keep you up to date on bills just like this. In fact, one of the things that we've been focused on this week is making sure that you have the information that you need in order to act on these things. And so you're going to be getting emails in the next couple of days, if not weeks, making sure that you know about these things, and then given the opportunity based on our action alert system on our website to go and let the appropriate representatives, elected officials, whether it's representative or senator, know what they need to know in order to hear from you and what you believe regarding these issues. So, guys, we're continually putting those forward, and want to make sure that our friends know what's going on.
Right.
Yeah, so just to sort of cut to the chase on
Yep.
that, if you go to the Action Center on our website, all of our action alerts will be listed there. You can survey all of the different ones that we have. Click on the appropriate ones for these two bills that are incidentally coming up in committees next week.
Yes.
And so if you have a chance over the weekend if you haven't already, to respond to these action alerts, you can easily send emails to your legislators.
Really easy.
And there is information in there, talking points that you can include in your email to easily communicate with your legislator or legislators about your interest in these bills. It's just a streamlined advocacy action center that you can use to do that. So we certainly encourage you to take advantage of that. And you can also, again, see the various other issues that we have action alerts for on the website.
And as always, we greatly appreciate your working together with us on this.
Absolutely.
And as we mentioned at the beginning, time is of the essence.
Yes.
It's just the next 2 weeks for the bills like these to either pass one of the chambers or not be eligible for the rest of the 2-year session.
That's right.
And once they pass, then they are eligible for the remainder of the session,
That's
which
right.
will go on for, we don't know exactly how long, but a couple of months at least. But it will certainly narrow down the scope of bills that are eligible to be considered during the remainder of this year's long legislative session and then next year's short session. So really important, very key time. And as Jerry said, it's timely. Time is of the essence. And so please keep an eye on your email inbox for action alerts that come from NC Family, because the next couple of weeks are really going to be pivotal times for legislation for this session.
Really quickly, before we go, we always want to leave you on a lighter note when we can. Some fun bills that are going through the process right now. How many of you out there really love getting robocalls?
Oh,
John is the only one on the face of the planet that enjoys getting them. There's a bill right now going through the process, the legislative process, that would greatly curb, if not all out, eliminate the ability for you to receive these robocalls by strengthening, beefing up the do not call list, and then actually adding robocalls to the list of things that you can actually petition the Attorney General about to say, hey, we don't want to get these anymore. And so no more will you get the calls, maybe even the texts that say things like, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I'm running for office. You know. So we'll you can keep up to date on that if you want. And then Representative Eiler and Senator Hanig have introduced bills to make the state saltwater reptile, the loggerhead turtle, and the state saltwater mammal, the bottlenose dolphin.
I think that's completely appropriate.
I think it's really cool. So just lots of stuff like that going through the building, and along with all the other very heavy substantive issues that we've talked about as well today. Thank you so much for watching this video and keeping up to date on the things that you and we care about here at NC Family. So for Jerry and John, I'm Mitch, and on behalf of the rest of our team here at NC Family, thank you for what you do to make this state, North Carolina, a state where God is honored, religious freedom flourishes, families thrive, and life is cherished.
Amen. Thank you all.